What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? It is Friday. This is ComixLaunch Live. Good to be with you and excited for the conversation that I'm about to have because we've got a returning guest, a returning champion coming back to the podcast. Caleb Palmquist is back. You may have know Caleb because he writes comics. In fact, he writes a lot of comics. He's, I think, over 30 campaigns and counting. And his work includes Dragon Grit, Swords of Arthur, as well as the Modern Mythology anthology series and Unicorn Vampire Hunter, which is now back for its 8th issue on Kickstarter. Welcome back to ComixLaunch, Caleb. How you doing, man?
Thanks. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. It's been, a little bit since you came on, and it's always fun with returning guests of just going and seeing the conversations that we've had in the past. And I don't know if you heard, I've been working on curating a physical planner for ComixLaunch, and one of the things I just decided to add to the planner was in certain sections just call out like best ofs for podcasts. So I literally had to go through 10 years of podcast episodes to identify 30 I wanted to highlight. In looking back at it, it's just like, oh man, so many great creators, so many great conversations. And so I'm hoping we have another one today. But to, I guess, kick things off, it's always fun to just take a look at the new thing that's live. And you're back on Kickstarter with Unicorn Vampire Hunter. What can you tell us about this project and property, and what's got you excited about it?
Sure. Unicorn Vampire Hunter is about a unicorn who hunts vampires with his horn. It's a fantasy adventure comic book, and I first launched it back in 2020, and it was my first kind of breakout successful book that I had. And so I've been working on this for quite a while, and as you can tell if you take a look at the campaign and see some of the rewards, the unicorn in this volume 2 is in hell, and so he's kind of dealing with forces in hell while his friends are in the mortal world trying to rescue him. And so this is the 8th issue. We were off Kickstarter. Well, this series was off Kickstarter for about a year and a half. Took a long hiatus while the various members of the creative team worked on different projects, but now we're back together and charging ahead. So we have a lot planned this year, but this is the really the kickoff of that.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's been a strong return for the series, and something you mentioned there about 2020 launching this one, and then feeling like, wow, all right, I think I've got something that really broke out. But you've been launching projects on Kickstarter since a lot earlier than that, and so I think it's worth noting that sometimes it will take a while before the right things line up, before you have something just like, wow, this thing exceeded expectations and really had momentum. And then once you have that, though, hey, all right, let's double down, let's triple down, let's move ahead on it. But having a series though that it's a proven commodity, but then and you've been having success with a release schedule, it can be a little bit scary to put it on hiatus or take some time off. Was that always the plan, or were you just only so much time in the day and so many projects that people could do?
Well, I will tell you, it was not always the plan. And one thing that I have learned the hard way is that in order to maintain a release schedule, you have to plan very far ahead, and you have to have just pristine communication with your team. And you can't assume anything, right? If you're expecting a certain schedule, you have to plan for that. and you have to be in communication about that. You have to be writing ahead of time. And, I mean, what had happened with this one actually is that Daryl Toe, who's the artist, just got a really cool opportunity to work on a different project that was going to keep him busy for about a year. And he took it. And of course, I was very excited for him. And
Yeah.
that meant that we couldn't do this book for a while. But then he and I made a plan. We are going to be releasing probably 3 more issues of this book this year. And we made that plan together going back like a year and a half ago. So it was not always the plan to take a hiatus, but as soon as we knew we were going to take a hiatus, we started planning for what are we going to do when we come back and how are we going to hit the ground running. I was able to kind of take that lesson that I learned and apply it to some of the other things that I've been doing. Speaking of, like you said, might take a while before you have something that breaks out. I was very scared of going on hiatus with this book because it is my like tried and true property that always performs. And I was going to go on this hiatus. And then during the hiatus, I launched Dragon Grit, which has been even more successful as a series. And so because of that, I'm not sure that I would have launched that book if I hadn't gone on hiatus with this one. There's always room to grow and expand. And every time, that I doubt myself, I end up, something else breaks through.
Yeah. And in looking back at past ComixLaunch episodes that you were on and some of the conversations that we had, I know finding that struggle of like, do I go with the sure thing or, the wrestling between what's marketable and what's scratching the creative itch or what's the Kickstarter market's going to be there for. I know this is something that like most creators will wrestle with a little bit, but having the nice thing, this really is the nice thing, especially for writers of, always having multiple irons in the fire, such that any one collaborator isn't going to stop you from producing. And you've obviously been able to maintain a pretty productive schedule on Kickstarter, even with this one taking a little bit of a break. So like in managing multiple different projects, like have you learned some things about project management, or are there tools, or are there just approaches to just like keep all the plates spinning properly that you've learned as you've kind of ramped up the number of projects that you've been working in, the number of people that you've been working with?
100%. And actually, with your planner that you're working on, I mean, that's super exciting to me because that's a lot of the stuff that I have been doing and like inventing as I go, because you have to.
Yeah.
If you don't have a system for keeping track, because at any given time, at various stages, I probably have like 10 projects that I'm thinking about, because I've got the projects that have already run and I'm working on getting them printed, or in some cases the art finished, and then fulfillment, and then the projects that are coming up. When am I going to launch and what am I doing for promotion? And then the projects further out where I'm, working with art teams to start to put stuff together. And what do I need to write and everything. And I mean, like every project requires all those steps. And keeping those straight, it really has gotten to the point where I can't just keep that in my brain anymore, because if I do, I miss stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely at the point where, in going back through the ComixLaunch archive and things like that, it's just like, oh, why did I stop doing that little trick? That used to work really well. Or you know what? Yeah, let's run that playbook, let that play back. And so, even talking to so many creators and working on so many launches, it keeps it somewhat fresh in your head. But being able to, have a manual, a blueprint, this is how, these are the recipes for what's worked so far, and constantly being able to improve them, but not starting from scratch, I think is absolutely key for most just creative processes. There's that sort of always the wrestling between wanting to be creative and fresh and spontaneous versus having some structure to actually get some stuff done and move things forward. And I think that's an eternal struggle that creatives have. So, what is? I remember just hearing you talk a little bit earlier in the year. This is going to be a ramp up year in terms of number of projects that you're working on and launching. And I'm curious, because I know you have an ambitious goal for total number of projects and just the presence and persistence on the Kickstarter platform in particular. What are some things that you're doing to be able to launch more and be more prolific this year?
Well, I am working on becoming more efficient with my fulfillment process.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to. I have not always leaned really hard into having books completed when I launch on Kickstarter, and I mean, people have been having that conversation forever. Like how complete does a book need to be? But I'm really pushing more toward books being done when I launch. But of course, that comes from a privileged position of I've done well enough that I can kind of have a little bit of cushion into completing stuff before I launch.
Yeah.
And so that's like a big one, is that I'm completing books before I launch, or getting them very close to complete before I launch. And then I'm improving the efficiency of my fulfillment. And I'm also just like thinking a lot more about schedules and, like, I mean, my calendar looks like a Tetris game, like really, like when can I fit stuff in? And I've started to play a little bit with alternate accounts. I know some creators who are really prolific are doing that more.
Yeah.
And I've only dipped my toe into that a little bit. But also knowing the difference, I think one thing that I've really started to think about is like, not every project needs the full court press.
Yeah.
Especially because what we do as creators is we're building up that brand. You're not ever just promoting one project. You're like promoting yourself as a creator and like your, like what you do on Kickstarter. And so everything leads into everything else. And so I've had to sort of pick and choose what is the most important to put that effort into. Because if I did, 30 podcasts on every single launch with how often I'm launching now, I mean, I would do nothing but podcasts.
Yeah.
And so I'm having to just be a little bit more selective, with I'm still putting in just as much effort, if not more, but I'm more strategic about where I apply that effort, because, everything takes time, and I have a day job, unfortunately. I mean, I like my job, but obviously, like in a perfect world, I'm just doing comics. And as I'm working toward that, time becomes more and more of a precious commodity,
Absolutely.
Everything costs time. And so, I mean, as you can see behind me, I've got stacks of a comic that I need to be bagging and boarding and getting ready to ship out. And I mean, like, I'm looking at my schedule for this weekend. I've got some bagging and boarding to do, like shipping to do. I've got some backer kits to build. I've got another Kickstarter for next month I need to build. I'm writing things. I mean, there's just like a million little tasks, and everything takes time.
Yeah, everything does take time, and it's it definitely can. I feel like it's easy to forget about all the extra steps and all of the other times, and there's like, and getting the balance right between what's going to cost, like what's just going to cost you time and money, and what's going to actually make you time and money. And that's where so something like backer kit, I always enjoy putting that little extra time, knowing that, all right, well, when I send that survey out, there's going to be a nice little bump there. And so that feels productive. But time spent doing, the bagging and the boarding and other things. It's like a lot of times if I'm going to be doing that stuff, I almost will say, okay, well that's got to be like time I might be watching it, catching up on my favorite show or something like that, because it's just not the most high value thing that you would be doing. And for you also to like be trying to fit in time to write these series so that you can have these things going. It can be very easy to get caught up in that Kickstarter launch mode and all the marketing thing. Is there anything that you've done such that even with all of the endless to-do lists for this launch, the next launch, the launch coming down the pipe, like how do you make sure that you're still getting that quality creating and writing time so that you got something to launch when it's time?
Well, the biggest way that I've done that is that I've started thinking about launches in terms of like I'm thinking months and months ahead.
Yeah.
And so because otherwise if I'm just thinking about next month's launch or 2 months from now, then I'm gonna like end up writing that stuff so close to when I'm launching, and then I'm not doing my best work. And so my current writing deadline for myself is the project that I'm going to be launching in September. Is what the next issue is what I'm writing. It's the issue of the thing that I'm launching in September is I'm writing now, because I know I need time to be able to write it and then to also, brew on it and get my beta readers and editors looking at it and all that kind of stuff. Because, I can't crunch it more than that without sacrificing quality.
Yeah.
In the writing. And that's something I think is easy to forget because we deal with artists and we deal with all these production lines and everything. And the writing is really critical that at its core, that's something a skill that we continue to refine and work on and value. Which I think in Kickstarter is all about like shininess and FOMO and all this other stuff. And I think like it can be easy to lose sight of the core quality of the product that you're putting out if you're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it seems like Kickstarter's been making a push for improving the transparency for creator track record. And they put more an emphasis on hey, making sure that we're clear about where our various past projects are in terms of how they've been fulfilled or are they working on. But I do know that there are some creators, and Kevin Laporte has been doing great analysis of just the Kickstarter platform on his website. And he'll occasionally flag certain creators that have 12 to 15 outstanding Kickstarters, but are still launching every month. And getting that balance is tough. I mean, I also know for me, if I've got more than one or two that haven't been fulfilled, it already starts to feel like that's going to be a lot of work on the back end. But I also know that when you've got multiple projects that you want to get out there, sometimes you just got to you got to get it in there when you can. But I do think the nice thing about prioritizing quality work and stuff with craft and story behind it, is that you do build those backers that are actually there, not for the shiny thing in the pan, just the shiny thing, but to, hey, I support this creator, I support this imprint. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the other thing is that, you said it's stressful to have more than a couple unfulfilled. I mean, to be honest, at any given time, I have somewhere between 2 and 6 unfulfilled.
Yeah.
But that's not because those are overdue. I mean, in most cases, I will admit I have had times when things have been overdue, of course. But I'm just launching so often that that's just kind of the schedule. I mean, even if a comic is completely done and I order it domestically, or with rush shipping or whatever, it still is like from the time the Kickstarter ends to when it's completely fulfilled, like minimum 2 months, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. It feels like there was a time when like you could get some printers that were turning things around in like a week. But man, like I just think everybody is stressed, and lead times have expanded, and so yeah, and even just the basic timings of, all right, here's a Kickstarter. Well, they're not going to be done collecting all of the credit cards for a week, so at least, so you can't really, you can't send a survey out anytime earlier than that. And then if it's backer kit, they want to wait 2 weeks after the Kickstarter money comes through, so you can pay them. And there's a lot of time that does get eaten up. And then if you didn't have the book quite finished, and then there's usually always something with the print files or the reviews of the printer, so there's a lot that time can get eaten up pretty quickly. But it sounds like, when you've been through this as many times as we have, nothing is we'll get the occasional monkey wrench here and there still, but all of that can be plotted and planned for, and you can have a pretty good estimate of how things are going to come out. But I know this is a year where it seems like if you pay any attention to the news or the stock market or the latest regulations, like it does feel like, more so than in past years, that just like the uncertainty of how we're going to do this is more so than it's been. I mean, you mentioned a game project that just announced that they were holding fulfillment for US based on tariff stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So, and I've had my own encounters. I think I've been able to navigate my way through it, but you never know what's going to happen. Like with packages coming in from overseas, who knows? But between the time that the printer prints them and they arrive on US soil, who knows what could happen. So, but I mean, it's some of that is just being prepared and planning for the unexpected. But I mean, it's also, unfortunately, for someone like me and you, I mean, we, to a certain degree, we can absorb certain unexpected things that happen. But for depending on how much money you're bringing in on Kickstarter and what your margins are, something like unexpected could be devastating.
Yeah. And there's on the that's the on the expense side, but then on the income side, if we're dealing with these things, our consumer base is dealing with these things as well. And I don't know, like I'm not raising the panic button quite yet or anything. And I do think one thing that COVID showed us is that, Kickstarter, as far as anything, was about as resilient as any platform for releasing your comics and things like that. So ideally, hopefully, the relationships and the fact that we're not putting out super expensive stuff, and it's people are still going to have to find their content and their entertainment somewhere while the world goes through its ebbs and flows. But it is worrisome that that we could be hit from both angles, and that could really just make it difficult to get our stuff out into the world, which is what we're doing this for.
Totally. Yeah. I was going to say, in terms of just managing projects and stuff, one thing that I've more recently this year been really embracing that I hadn't in the past is really being able to think about how much time something is going to take, because it's so easy to say yes to things when your time is theoretical. But then when it comes down to it, like you might not have time. And so I tend to actually, when I take on new obligations or I start a new project or I agree to work with someone on something, I like looked at my calendar and see like where I'm going to have time. And I know that's like a pretty high level of planning ahead and organization. But in the last few years, I've started to get a lot of a lot of offers of collaboration, let's say, which is wild to me to think that I'm someone people want to collaborate with, but it, it is. And at first I just started saying yes to every opportunity.
Yeah.
And I eventually had to start, telling people no, or like, here's what I can do, or, or like, I can point you in this direction, but that I can't take on every obligation, because what will end up happening is I just won't have time, and I'll be super stressed trying to make time for everything. But, I just have to, even with my own projects, I have to prioritize, because I have so many ideas and so many things that I want to do, but there are certain things that are just going to do better, whether that's more personally fulfilling or whether they're just going to be more profitable. And I have to focus on those in order to grow the business. And so, just like knowing when to say no and prioritizing what things are worth my time has just become a much bigger deal as I'm doing more and more. And that can be tough, because, a lot of us, especially people that want to be agreeable, but also, someone like you, clearly you have a lot of interests, different genres, different styles of storytelling. So like, a cool idea is always going to be a cool idea, but like saying yes to something inevitably means, well, that yes is going to, trigger 1,000 no's for your time, attention, etc., for something else. So right.
Making sure it's the right yeses, the hell yeses, as opposed to something that's like, that could be cool. And thankfully, most of us, knock on wood, we get a fair amount of time on this earth. So even if you have to, say, it doesn't necessarily have to be a no. It could be a not now.
Right.
One of the first conversations that we had, sort of around the topic of, letting go of what wasn't working, in order to find more success. Anything that comes to mind recently that you maybe had to ditch or had to refine that wasn't working?
Yeah, I mean, there's always stuff, and there are projects that I've started to move away from because they're not working, or they're not as successful. For example, in my hiatus year from Unicorn Vampire Hunter, I went hard as an experiment with a bunch of spin-offs of the world of Unicorn Vampire Hunter. Mm-hmm. I did several, and they were fine. They didn't lose me money, in the sense that like they didn't cost more to produce than they brought in, but they certainly weren't making money. And then when you calculate time and everything, it's like, so what I was getting is like, I think the people who backed them and read them really enjoyed them, and I think they were glad that they happened. You can see my Unicorn versus Vampire Detective. And then I had this Make 100 project,
Unicorn Universe, yeah.
Yep, and a few other things. And it really just appealed to like the really hardcore fans who came through on those things.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But that wasn't growing my brand and my audience. It was just like sort of playing with the toys that I had.
Yeah.
Which is fun, and I had fun doing it. But yeah, I did a crossover between my two vampire comics. And I even did like a what if, like Elseworld style Unicorn Vampire Hunter book. And I did all that stuff, and it was fun, but again, I wasn't growing.
Yeah.
And the thing that I did in the hiatus that did cause me to grow was just something new and original, which was Dragon Grit, which is not connected to any previous thing. It's not a gimmick. It is like a new original story that I care a lot about. It has great art. And so moving forward, as I wrap up some of the trailing ends of that crossover stuff that I did, I'm really focusing on like new original stuff, because that is the stuff that I think people respond to, and that new people respond to. I mean, if you go into the comic shop and you've never read Aquaman or the Flash or
Right.
Batman, and they're like, here's a new issue where Aquaman and the Flash and the Batman team up, but you need to have read the last 10 issues of each of those series in order to know what's happening here. Like, people who have read all that are going to be excited probably, but the people, no like brand new reader to DC Comics is picking that issue up and being like, this is what is hooking me into this series.
Yeah. It's almost like, and I think we've seen that with like, certain, it's kind of a gamble, right? I think of like Invincible Universe, that a book that came out, or something like that, where it's like, on the one hand, you're really trying to lean in on the brand that's established that you can call out, but if it feels like, well, this is supplementary, it's kind of like the Marvel and DC events, and they're like spin-off books. They never do as much as like the main event. But then I'm also there are also some examples, like I look at like Rob Moltari or Charlie Stickney, right? Where like they actually did I think they did spin-offs for their characters with, a different lead character, but it's got the whole like different title. And it's just like a kind of a fresh chance to almost rebrand and appeal to like a slightly different audience. And those things ended up like surpassing what the original did. And I think there's an art to it. But
100.
But also like, you don't know until you actually let her rip.
And I think that, I mean, that's a great point. And both of those guys did like have these excellent, essentially spin-off books that ended up being really popular in their own right. And I think that to that end, I will say that I'm not like completely closing the door on doing other stuff like within the world of these books. But I'm going to make sure that the next time I do something like that, it really has its own identity. And I think that's what you just hit on with those two examples, is that both of those books, I think it's the Charlie's is about the like elf character. It's like more of a not safe for work book. And then Rob's is like about the like Scottish werewolf. It's like further back in the past.
Yeah, and kind of like a historical fiction, almost like different era. And female, like he really leaned into like the female driven co-creator and just just kind of like a rebrand. And those really hit. I also, for us, like when we like Sync, we did 10 issues of Sync, and then we decided to do like a big tale featuring the main character, like one of the main characters of Sync, but we're like, all right, we were a hiatus, and so we're like, let's try to get that number one energy back, and so we called that like Dig Number One. And that was actually the biggest sync launch. So we could ever lean in, hey, it's 64 pages, big story, like we could pitch it like on its own as its own thing. And so I think we were able to get a lot of new people just like, oh, this looks cool and it has number one on it, so I'm going to jump on this bad boy. And then obviously we were also able to, as the first new Sync thing in a couple of years, the Sync folks all came out of the woodwork again, and we're really excited about it. And that was definitely able to energize the audience and such that it's like even a little bit harder, like to get them all back for like the 13th issue or the 14th issue, because that also felt like something where like if you read Sync, and if you read Sync in trades or if you read it in single issues, you had to get this book because this was like its own thing. And I think with some of our serials, like we might sort of have that where like we're splitting our audience. Some thankfully will back every campaign and get every version of this thing with the super fans, but launching a completely new thing that feels like if you stumbled upon it without having any context, you'd have to have it, as well as appealing to the super fans. I think that's sort of the special sauce.
Oh yeah, and I have definitely found as I've diversified into multiple different genres and different series that while there are those super fans who come and back everything I ever do, there's definitely also people that are very siloed into the different series that I make. I mean, I have some backers who are like extremely loyal to Unicorn Vampire Hunter or to Dragon Grit or even to some of the other series that I've done that have been less popular, and they just like don't touch my other stuff. It's like they're like, that's the one thing that I want.
Yeah.
um, and I don't blame them for that. But then, you know, it's like, so I'm always thinking about how do I get more cross pollination there too.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that we've been talking about, like backer kit or whatever, like the sort of upsell question that works like a charm is just like an offer to get a variant for, that's, at a little bit of a discount, yes or no. And we usually get like 10 to 15% of people are like, yeah, throw one in. And that's a great opportunity for me to just like, hey, you probably don't, this person doesn't have this series. Let's give them a variant number one of this one. And maybe we'll get some on the trade next time around. Yeah.
100%. I learned that from you, and I've been doing that. Not on every single backer kit, but definitely when I feel like, well, I could offer something, a little something extra, and I don't have another extra thing to offer.
Yeah.
And then it does. A lot of people love that. And I have, plenty of backstock where I'm like, exactly right. Can I get them interested in something else or offer them something cool that I have? So yeah, that's a great tip. And I've been doing that. And I've also been expanding on that a little bit, even depending on the campaign. I will offer a unique item on the backer kit and have that question when you do the questions of like, do you want to add this thing? This is like an exclusive item. I'm actually always looking for, there was I may have talked about this on the show before or not, but there was a board game campaign a couple of years ago that didn't have a playmat on the actual Kickstarter campaign. But then when they did the backer kit survey, one of the questions was, we have this phenomenal deluxe playmat for the board game and it's $30, and would you like to add it? And I fell for it, and I'm so sure that like a huge percentage of their many thousand backers also did.
Yeah.
And so what I always say to Curtis Clow, Beastlands friend of mine, I always say, like, I'm looking, trying to figure out what the playmat of comics is so that I can hone in on that.
Yeah. With the last one that I sent out, a lot of times in the last week of a campaign, I will unlock something new, whether it's a new cover or standee or just something. But I also know that there's a certain percentage of Kickstarter backers that come out day one, back, and then they're out, right? They'll see you at the survey. They're not reading your updates. They're not checking in on their pledges or everything. And so even if I gave people like, enough time to add that thing on during the Kickstarter campaign and got a bunch of add-ons, sometimes I will do like a very specific question about, hey, you might have missed this. And the uptake on that always shows me that, oh, well, that will definitely be the kind, it was definitely worth asking that question, because you can guarantee not everyone was then going to go look and find that item in the add-on thing. And I actually had a conversation with one of the product managers at Kickstarter last week, and because they were walking me through what they're working on for their new pledge manager, and the sort of one-click upsell add-on question was not something that they have built out yet. And so I actually, they were interested enough that I fired up my backer kit pledge manager, walked through some data on just a couple of things, and I'm like, yeah, so like, I'm like, this one question on this one survey, made 4,000 or like having the ability for this question, like, it was an extra $4,000, in upsell questions here. So that alone would keep me from moving from backer, or like away from the backer kit pledge manager. And I think I did a good job of at least making the case that that's worth something worth them building in.
Oh
But
yeah.
it'll be interesting if they are able to get their pledge manager to the point where it's a no-brainer for even backer kit power users to use. I think that, well, that it'll at least save a little bit of money on the upfront, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it would also just make it easier for backers to go through the process. But I mean, a while back, maybe sometime last year, I got an invite. You know, occasionally they send out invites to beta test their whatever new feature on their survey.
Yeah.
And I responded to him, and I ended up having a conversation with somebody at Kickstarter, and I was like, look, you know, until you have feature A, B, and C,
Yeah.
like it's just not worth it. I get so much benefit from those things that I can't give those up, even though I would love to help you test your new features. Like, you know, I can't take that loss.
Yeah. And I think in the past they were kind of like, okay, yeah, we're not going to do that. And now I think they really seem to be like, hey, we're in a war here, and we're gonna, you know, listen to what our users are doing, because yeah, I think like probably most businesses, they probably realize that just having one way to make money is, you know, a little bit dangerous and a little bit and like really caps off your growth ability. And so and also the fact that, like, if you could have or they probably, I mean, if I'm Kickstarter saying that and seeing that, like, oh, we could have a creator jump on here, like the Brandon Sanderson, have the biggest campaign in you know, crowdfunding history, and then launch his next campaign on our competitor, who he used to make another, you know, couple million on the back end of our last campaign. Like that's, yeah, that's big money being lost. So it's cool to see that they're fighting back there, but also just, you know, recognizing, like, as a tool, BackerKit has got a decade head start on them.
Oh yeah.
And there's just like so much that it does and can do that when I put on my sort of dusty product manager hat for a software product anyway, I can only imagine, you know, like how many like what the roadmap looks like. But I did see that they are planning on soon offering digital reward delivery through Kickstarter, which I think is going to be a cool no-brainer, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. For sure. I mean, even just, I mean, BackerKit's digital delivery is so cool. It has really changed, made everything so much easier for me, because before I use that, you know, if you have multiple different digital rewards, you have to go through everybody and like figure out who you're going to message what digital rewards to. And that's like a whole pain. So yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm preaching on the choir in terms of how great BackerKit is and how helpful that is. And, you know, just like, one thing though the Kickstarter has done recently that I think feels like very modeled after BackerKit is that you can import add-ons from previous rewards now, which is huge, because at this point on BackerKit, especially if I'm doing a new BackerKit from the same series, I can essentially copy forward everything.
Yeah.
From, like, for issue 8 of Unicorn Vampire Hunter, I'll just copy forward everything from issue 7 and then modify it from there, which saves me hours of time. I mean, it's massive.
Yeah. The only thing I was a little disappointed after hearing that and being excited. The last I checked, it was you still have to copy each thing one at a time, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, you do.
And I think, like, even backer kits, like, I have the annoying thing where backer kit lets you copy them from a project, but it copies everything. So it's like on Kickstarter, you either have to, like, when you're copying add-ons from past projects, you got to, you know, go one at a time. But on BackerKit, I end up spending a lot of time deleting the add-ons that I copied over that are no longer, you know, valid. So, that is one thing. Like, about these platforms evolving and becoming more just feature forward. Like, you would think Tyler James in 2025, it would be faster to produce a Kickstarter and make a Kickstarter page than in 2012, but it's actually not. There's just more stuff to do. So
I mean,
I don't know. Yeah.
What I wish that both BackerKit and Kickstarter would let me do is create a persistent inventory store that I can have every campaign access. And maybe I like turn certain things on or off for each one, but like if I can be like, okay, I know I'm going to offer volume 1 of Unicorn Vampire Hunter on every campaign that I ever do, like as an add-on, because that's like an incredibly well-selling add-on. It's something that's like easy, and I'm always going to have it. And like, why can't I just have a place where I'm like, here are my evergreen add-ons and I want them on every campaign, and just let me automatically have them. And but
yeah, it does. It also, and I think comics are weird, right? In that, we, more than any other category, are repeat users, and repeat users of similar stuff, and recycle a lot of the past stuff from campaign to campaign. And so like, if they were, and I think Crowdfunder does this, where like there is some ability to like sort of have a global series, the idea of a series, and then individual launches from it. It does feel like if someone like is following your series, like rather than have them follow the project, if they could just follow the series, and hey, you're following this until you like manually pull yourself off it, that would be very helpful. Because one thing I have found is like, I think it's actually a lot harder now to build a big pre-launch following list, just in terms of like having to go and ask people to do this every time. I feel like people think it's less important to follow campaigns in some ways, simply because, well, I know I'm going to see it, and the novelty is there. So I don't know. I've just found it like, even with like lists and audience size growing and backer count, bigger, like getting people to actually hit that follow button can sometimes feels like it might be a little bit harder now than it was a couple of years ago.
Well, I will tell you that just looking at my stats on the back end of my current campaign, and I always do a big push to have people sign up. And like on this most recent campaign, I had about 300 people sign up, which is not my record, but it's decent. That's that's about where I want to be. And the backers who backed from the email that they get because it was a new project from a creator you've backed is double the value of the project follower link. So now there's obviously probably some crossover between that.
Yeah.
But Kickstarter is automatically sending out an email just to all the people who have backed you before, unless they've specifically opted out of that.
Right. Yeah.
And so, one thing I've noticed, I have sometimes experimented with launching a project and delaying any of my like BackerKit or emails for a few hours, and just to see like how many people are coming and backing just on the strength of that. And it's always a lot. And part of that is because I've done, nearly 40 launches, and like there's a lot of people following my profile. But I mean, I agree with you. It does seem like it's more difficult, and it also feels like something that's like, if I'm launching every month, or if I'm someone like Pat Shand or Mike Tiener is launching 3 times a month, it makes it hard for each launch to feel like an event. And then like asking people to hit that follow button every time is just like an extra chore that they're doing, because they're going to get notified anyway.
Yeah. Trying to find different ways to incentivize it, to encourage, is definitely key. And the other thing in working on the ComixLaunch planner that I've been kicking around is like wanting it to be accessible both for the very first time creator, but then also for the veteran, and certain, and just making sure that like can one tool really serve both audiences. And I think in certain ways it can, but yeah, like the first time you're going through it, and also I do feel like though a lot of it with crowdfunding is what you bring to it. Like if it's your very, and I occasionally will hear this with chat when people are like, they're in their very first launch and like everything feels is supercharged and exciting because you actually don't know that you're going to get more than like your mom and a couple people that you browbeat to back. And when that first, oversee like that first pledge comes in from some country that you've never been to or some person that you've never heard of, it's definitely can fire you up. We got Echo Squad in the house. Said, any recommendations on best social medias to get awareness of your comics? I don't know, how are you feeling about social media these days, and what are you sort of leaning into or out of, or are you at all?
Just the other day, Mike Tiener posted on Facebook and he said marketing is more than just posting on social media. And of course I razzed him about it because that's what I do, but also there's a real discussion happening there because I think social media frankly sucks for promoting a comic book on Kickstarter. I just think it has very limited utility. Yeah. I do it on Instagram and I do it on Facebook, and I mean, a caveat is that I'm bad at social media. I've never been a big poster, and I'm really not active on X or Blue Sky or anything. I have all those accounts, but I'm not very active. And, but I have just found that there was a time when Facebook was a better tool for promoting a Kickstarter when I first was starting out, like 2018, 2019. But anymore, it's really not. I mean, I still use Facebook as a tool for connecting with people, and the business side of things, connecting with artists and distributors and whatever. But I have found that trying to promote stuff on Facebook or on Instagram really sucks. I mean, Instagram is especially bad because unless you pay for it, you cannot put a link in your post.
I think only like story, like in your story, you might be able to post a link. But if you don't have a big following, you won't have people following your stories that are gonna actually see it. So, right. I mean, the old standby still stands. First and foremost, make sure that you're working on that email list, building an email list, finding a platform. A lot of people are on Substack, but just like good old fashioned email is still where a lot of the business gets done. I mean, most of the people that Kickstarter's driving to your Kickstarter, well, how are they doing it? They're doing it through emails that people have opted in to get. And so having that said, and then in terms of like the best social media you use, I think thinking about what, where are you already consuming and what kind of content do you want to put out on a regular basis? As opposed to like trying to think, well, what's the best social media platform? And so like, instead it's like, all right, how do I like to communicate? For me, well, I like podcasts and things like that. So podcast is something that I do. Some people are like visual. And so like, yeah, you're going to do cartoons, well, or share little panels or things like that. Maybe a visual thing like Instagram, you can do that. But I also think like expecting the algorithms and the platforms to drive most of your traffic to your Kickstarter campaign can definitely be, something that's going to upset you when it doesn't pan out.
Well, another thing that I will say that is huge that I've really started to learn about social media and content on the internet is in general is what kind of content are you following and listening to? Yeah. And because, okay, if the ComixLaunch podcast were just like, hey, I'm going to tell you about my new issue of Sync every time, and that was all that was just like you being like, please go to my Kickstarter, like, like it wouldn't be a popular podcast. It's like, it's like, even if, because in that case, people would just want to read the comic. And I think if you're on social media and you're just like, here's the link to my Kickstarter, go back my Kickstarter, here's my Kickstarter, like that's not interesting content from
Yeah.
like a social media perspective. And so you know, you've got someone like Kevin Laporte, like you were talking about, is doing this like really interesting analysis. His Substack is really growing very quickly because he's got people like us who are following him, who are getting a lot of value from the insights he's putting out like on a daily basis. And then, you know, things like this podcast where you're talking about the industry and talking about Kickstarter and stuff, and this things that people want to hear about. And then like there's a promotion aspect within that, but that's not like the meat of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
I mean, you know, it's the like 80-20 of value,
mhm.
where you can earn the right, or it's not even like you can earn the right to make an ask every now and then when you've provided value and you help people out. But in some cases, like just being valuable to people, and being interested in the kinds of things that they might be interested in, well, that's going to draw them to you in a way that, you know, just link spamming is going to do. I mean, you know, I always tell people that ask me about getting on this podcast, if they have a Kickstarter, it's like, okay, yeah, but what are we going to talk about that's going to be relevant to the audience of this? You know, our core audience and demographic is not people looking for the coolest new thing on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Now, comic creators happen to also be like some of the biggest supporters of Kickstarters, and I know a lot of people have like heard creators and it's like, oh, that project sounds cool, let me go back and they discover creators from this show. But it's usually a byproduct of those creators coming on and you know, sharing tips, strategies, their story, and making a connection that way. And so just getting that mix right, it can be difficult. But
Oh yeah. One of the things that I'm doing this year, actually, that's new, and actually, Tyler, you participated in this in our next issue. You're going to be in it, but where Curtis Clow and I are doing a Substack called Ink to Table, which is modeled after the very successful and popular zine Panel X Panel, which no longer is no longer being published, but it's a monthly Substack about really top quality indie comics on Kickstarter, and then we do deep dives with the creators, and we're just like talking about their process, and then we're talking about Kickstarter in general, and that's something that we did not because we were like, okay, this is going to help us fund our projects, but because we're interested in the community and the projects people are doing, and like having those conversations, just like this podcast, right, is like really an investigation into the whole. I mean, you're constantly having conversations about Kickstarter and how it's evolving and comics on Kickstarter. And so I think my point in not saying all that is, if you're doing something like what Tyler's doing, or what like Kevin Laporte's doing, or whatever, and really like actively, earnestly engaging in the community, then you might start generating conversation, which is going to get more eyes on you, which might help whatever you're doing creatively. But I think if you're going on social media just to shout into the void about your project, it's just not going to be successful or helpful.
Yeah. Unless all you want to do is make your thing, and then it's just like, hey, like posting a webcomic, I'm posting stuff to my webcomic, and you can read my webcomic or something like that, or you can read it. Then I also think like there is something to that. There is something that the creators like, what do? I just create. And if it's good,
sure,
it will eventually like, it'll attract it. But yeah, you know, it does not seem like there is that one key strategy or just one power. If I post at this time with using this style of hashtag and this, you know, 1-2 punch. Yeah, that's not.
I wish that there was. If there was a hashtag I could include on my tweets to then get hundreds of backers going to my Kickstarter, I'd use it every time. But
yeah, that cheat code hasn't been discovered yet. But I'll tell you, if once somebody knows it, we'll share it on this podcast, and we'll all be just on easy street. Well, awesome, man. It's been great catching up. The project is Unicorn Vampire Hunter, closing in on 300 backers for the big return. Got about 3 weeks to go. Any, you know, for this campaign, you got any stretch goals or anything waiting in the wings, or that you're trying to push in push out this one over the next couple of weeks, or you gonna
Yeah,
ride
I
this,
mean,
this pony home?
I will be announcing some stretch goals by the time the podcast version of this comes out. Those will be announced. So we have some cool pieces of art. But I mean, the cool thing on this one is that we did a role playing game one-shot adventure that you can also get on this campaign for people who like D&D. We
nice.
had done one before that was quite successful and people liked it a lot. So we're doing another one of those. And
yeah, I'm working on or we've got a project called Grolgar and Shanks. It's John Lees and Joe Mulvey that's coming up, and it's D&D, or not D&D. It's like a fantasy mystery, and I want to do some like D&D related stuff to it. My problem is I have never actually done a D&D anything, so
okay.
So like I'm gonna try to figure out how to make that happen, but I will have to get some D&D experience before I feel comfortable launching anything or including anything.
I'm positive that within your community there are probably dozens of dungeon masters who would be happy to host a Discord, a one-shot D&D adventure for you and teach you the ropes.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would definitely be cool. Well, awesome, man. I excited about just seeing this, and I guess there's a whole lot more unicorn coming this year. It sounds like, as well as some of your other projects. Anything else you want to tease?
The only thing that I would say is that I'm bringing back my King Arthur series this year. Swords of Arthur is finally coming back with a new installment. And I'm super excited about that. I have huge plans for that series, and we're gonna hit the ground running with that one this year as well. So you can look forward to that. And actually, one of the characters from that series has a small cameo, a very blink and you'll miss it background cameo in this issue, as a fun Easter egg. So
nice.
If you happen to see that, yeah.
Nice. And this the cover and the project image. Maya Osaki, that cover is just gorgeous, man.
Oh yeah, no,
that one.
She is phenomenal, and I'm definitely going to be working with her again in the future. She's very, very talented, and that's an add-on exclusive cover which I've not done before, but people have responded really well to it. So it's
awesome.
Little strategy.
Well, yeah, I like it. I like it a lot, and I'm glad to see it's working out for you. Glad the hiatus did not take too much off what's going on there. It looks like it's off to a great start, and it's going to be another awesome launch for you. So happy to see the comeback is triumphant there.
Thank you.
Awesome, Caleb. Well, have a great rest of the day and the weekend, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
All right. And everybody out there in Comics Launch Land, thanks so much for tuning in. We can't wait to see what y'all launch next. Take care, everybody.